So today we'll talk on how to generate value with circularity. And this webinar is part of the C-VoUCHER project, which is a European program dedicated to the circular economy and whose aim is to support the ecosystem in developing circularity. As you will see at the end of this presentation, C-VoUCHER provides also funding for SMEs and mid-cap to turn circular. But the most important is to know why to turn circular and how to make value from it. And this is what we'll cover this morning. So let me introduce myself first. So I'm Marie, and I'm really happy to be here today. So here at BLUMORPHO, I'm innovation developer. And as you know, BLUMORPHO is a disruption partner for industrial players. We're especially working on bankable challenges, delivering technical and business solutions. And sustainable business models are part of it. So circular economy, circular business models, circular finance, all things circular basically are a very hot topic right now and are answering major industrial and societal challenges. To start and to make it very clear to all, circularity is not only about waste management. It is designed to be an economic model that generates value, especially taking into account that consumers are becoming more and more involved, and with their raising awareness and willingness to change not only their consumption habits, but also the world surrounding them. The consumer's impact is also possible with the development of social network and media. Many consider that sustainable business models are not anymore a nice to have, but a must do. So in a nutshell, circular economy main drivers are the technology, sustainability, and consumption models. In other words, if we consider the European Commission definition as follows, circular economy represents a development strategy that entails economic growth without increasing consumption of resources, deeply transform production chains and consumption habits, and redesign industrial systems at the system level. As an introduction, I also wanted to mention the 5 most mentioned business models when dealing with circular economy. So we can actually launch a discussion. So we have product as a service, recycling and recovery, circular supply chains, product life extension, and sharing platform. But we're not here today to speak about theory, so let's dive into the topic and define concretely the business value behind the circular economy. I'm very happy to welcome key speakers who will share with you their own analysis and engagement into circular economy. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to ask your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll take the time to answer them at the very end. Also, if you might be interested in knowing more about financing opportunities for circular solutions, stay tuned as we'll have a dedicated webinar later on today on the topic from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So let's get started. Today we have the pleasure to receive investors and corporates who are deeply involved in this circular economy field and who will share with us why they've made the shift towards sustainable business models. So our first speaker is Gilles Geoffroy, Investment Director and Partner at Alter Equity, an impact investment fund based in Paris, who unfortunately won't be able to attend this morning. However, we've recorded his answers, so you will still be able to hear his interesting insights on circular business models. We also have Dr. Peter Lukassen, who joined Bosch in 2008 after positions in controlling, manufacturing, and logistics. He became Circular Economy Manager for the Automotive Aftermarket Division of Bosch in 2019. Hello, Peter Lukassen.
Hello, Marie.
Hi, Peter. I have a quick question for you. I was wondering, how do you go from a position in controlling, manufacturing, and logistics to being a Circular Economy Manager at Bosch?
Well, actually, as my past, I always was interested, especially in the connecting and interfacing fields between the different business areas. Circularity is right at the heart of this. So actually, in my current position, I'm really drawing out of the experiences of all my previous positions to bring back together all insights which are required to drive your business model.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. And finally, we have Francesca Suarez from Mirova, who has created a framework for analyzing the environmental and social opportunities and risk in consumer-facing companies. She's currently the sustainability analyst covering the consumers industries, food and beverage, textile, and footwear. Hello, Francesca Suarez.
Hi, Marie. How are you?
Hi, I'm really good, thank you. I have a quick question for you that comes to my mind is, what were the drivers for Natixis to create and develop Mirova?
So the main drivers that brought us that we saw that, so well, let's start. Maybe Mirova was created around in 2012, and we were first initially a business unit, and we became a subsidiary in 2014. And the main drivers to create this business unit and company that's solely dedicated to sustainability investing is that we saw that the world was moving fast, and that if investors did not catch up with sustainability, then we would be left behind. And why we decided to be separate was that so as to allow Mirova the flexibility to really be avant-garde, ahead of the curve with regards to sustainability.
Okay, I see. Okay. So now that everyone has been introduced, I would like to know a bit more about you, the audience. If you could answer the following 3 questions that should pop up very soon on your screen as to who are you, it's so our speakers can better address the different interesting points for you when talking. A few more seconds. Okay. And the second question would be, what's your level of knowledge in circularity? Is it low, medium, or high? And finally, if you could let us know if you've ever heard of the impact investment activity. Okay, thank you. That's actually interesting. It seems that the impact investment activity is not so famous, so we'll try to define it better with Gilles Geoffroy today. So many thanks for your answers, and let's start. So first of all, I would like to ask to our 3 speakers why there's such an interest for these sustainable business models, and are they proven yet, and why are you interested in these topics? So maybe Peter Lukassen, you can start.
Yes, sure. Marie, if you could, just could move to the next slide, because why is there such an interest in sustainability and circularity? Well, there we can really go up to the top global political levels. So there are from the UN 17 goals for sustainable development, and circularity, amongst other goals, which are quite known, of course, no poverty, zero hunger. Number 12 is here where circularity comes into play, responsible consumption and production. And there are also some figures which are quite interesting. And for this, I would just quickly ask you to go to the next slide. So there is a recent study published by the European Climate Foundation, where there had been a study on how we are consuming our energy, and also how we are how our emissions are structured. And looking at the target state of 2050, there's a prognosis for EU that we have 500 million, so 530 million tons of CO2 just for the 4 main resources: steel, plastics, aluminium, and cement. And circularity in this play can save almost, or a little bit more than half of it, 300 million tons. And we clearly know that with all our targets for the global climate and also the IPCC target, we are currently not on track to limit the global warming. Circularity is and will be one major key element in this. And yes, it is also something which already has proven. So just speaking for Bosch, we are now doing circularity in the means of remanufacturing. for more than 50 years, and alone Bosch is saving at about 25 to 30,000 tons of CO2 every year, and circularity for us is one cornerstone why we are able as Bosch to be CO2 neutral from 2020 onwards.
Okay, and why is Bosch interested in these topics?
Well, we are interested in these topics due to the contribution, of course, to the overall goals, and also it's a business model for us. As mentioned, for 50 years we are doing this. We are saving on resources, and of course, by saving on resources, we are saving on cost, and part this we are giving to our customers. So it's a profitable business model for us and also beneficial for our customers, and it's also strong growing. I will later on have a short picture of in the areas where we currently are already doing circularity, and this will increase over the future.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And Francesca Suarez, what do you think about the current interest for these sustainable business models?
So the current interest, I think, is very strong. I feel that today, from an investor perspective, I would say that a lot of investors we've seen a pickup following the Paris Agreement in 2015. We've seen a realization from the investor community that sustainability really needs to be taken more into consideration into our investment decision making, and so we see that it's very picking up. And also, furthermore, if we want to ensure that these businesses exist tomorrow, then they have to evolve their business models into a more sustainable one. The sustainable development issues are changing the world, and the businesses need to adapt. So we believe that it's no longer a choice, but rather a necessity to do so. In terms of whether they're proven yet, I think we can see examples, like small level examples on when they would work. However, what we would like to see now is a question of scalability, which for the moment has yet to be seen.
Okay, and why is Mirova interested in these topics?
Yeah, so Mirova believes that sustainable development provides a growth opportunity for business today, and the businesses that provide the solutions to the issues of sustainability, we believe, will be the winners of tomorrow. As such, our investment philosophy is to invest in companies and or projects that provide solutions to today's sustainable development issues that will eventually shape our future.
Okay, thank you, Francesca. So as mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, Gilles Geoffroy is not here today, but here is his answer to his interest in sustainable business models.
Okay, so first of all, we think that they are proven yet. There are so many examples, and we're gonna talk about a few of them later in the presentation. But to answer directly to your question, yes, they are proven yes at the moment. Why is there an interest? We think the interest is twofold. On the one hand, the world is obviously suffering from social as well as environmental major issues. And we all know that our future can be catastrophic if we don't tackle those issues. So the world is really in need for solutions, and part of the solutions can come from the corporate world, especially from the innovation world, coming from startups. On the other hand, we see more and more entrepreneurs are willing to tackle those issues. They want to tackle those issues first because they want to build a company with a purpose. But at the same time, they are willing to scale profitable businesses in order to secure their business model, to secure the sustainability of their company, having the ability to invest, having the ability to develop their company. So the combination of a world really needing some solutions and an ecosystem of entrepreneurs who are willing to tackle those issues make it very clear that there is, and there have been for the past 2 years especially, a big trend for those sustainable businesses.
Okay, and why is Alter Equity interested in these topics?
First of all, impact investing is at the heart of our investment philosophy. It has been from the beginning and since 2013, when we launched the first fund, Alter Equity 3P. Alter Equity is a private equity firm managing two funds. So Alter Equity 3P created in 2013, and Alter Equity 3P2, which was launched last year. Those two funds are growth funds. They are committed to a more responsible and profitable economy, meaning that they support activities and behaviors deeply respectful of nature and people's long-term interests, while seeking an attractive return for their investors at the same time. So it was from the beginning our purpose to be able to show the world and to make a case for businesses that can be both responsible and profitable at the same time.
So just as a quick reminder, you can ask your question throughout the webinar, and we'll have a quick look at the end of the webinar so our speakers can answer them. So now let's focus in more details on circular economy. So Peter Lukassen, Bosch, as a major industrial, we could expect that you show the right path to smaller players. How did Bosch become an actor of the circular economy, and what have been the impact so far?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. We have started the circular economy in the way of remanufacturing with starters and alternators some 50 years ago in our plant in Göttingen. And basically, the reason was that we saw, especially in those metal parts, that there is a lot of still usage in those parts, and it's completely waste if you throw away these kind of bodies and just produce them anew. There's a lot of energy and also cost associated with this. So we started by, in a serious production way to disassemble them, to take all their entire parts out of those, especially plastic components or other components which are destroyed, and then put in new small components, reassemble them and test them on the same bench, and have the same quality as well as a warranty associated with these parts. And over the last 50 years, this developed to be quite a successful business model for both us as well as our customers. And here you can see, so the starters and alternators, they are in the top middle of this slide, that we in the meantime have a lot of in the diesel side injectors. We also have, if you go a little bit down to the left bottom, we have also electronic components where you can do a lot of free manufacturing. And also, if you think about just about the fast life cycle of electronics, in the meantime, you cannot get any more the original chips you had on motherboards. Even 5 years after the initial production. So you have to recover them out of the old parts and give them a new life, update the software, and then basically you have a second, third, or fourth life with those parts, and the customer really gets the quality as he is expected, with also the benefit of course, an ecological behavior and also an economic behavior.
It's quite impressive to see that Bosch has actually been putting in place circular solution for almost 50 years now. And I was wondering, what does your daily work imply as circular economy manager?
Well, as you have seen on a slide before, in the meantime, we really have a very wide variety of products where we apply this circular economy. And of course, we have also individual business units who are driving these businesses. But with new technology coming into play, especially the electronics, with batteries, with autonomous driving, with all these kind of new applications, there's really in the meantime the alignment to have a common mission and vision for these activities. We have also, of course, the political picture. It has to fit with our overall initiatives. So I'm in the role of bringing all these business units together to have a common strategy in the field of circularity. And yeah, if you also come where we are from, why we are doing this, we have the social responsibility, green spirit. And one thing I haven't spoken so far is also the scarcity of raw materials. we already see today that in the future we will have difficulties to just have enough of the heavy metals, of the scarce elements, to really produce all those parts which we need. So we really have to recover. And I'm not only talking about a life cycle. In a circularity, you really have basically an endless cycle. You have to go from cradle to cradle. So to bring a product really to a complete new start and save everything which we have and make it as good as possible, or even sometimes better in terms of electronics. Just consider that your component has the latest software evolution on your device, so it can even be better than the original product which you bought. And of course, all is attached with an attractive price, because we are saving on these energy and resources, and this means that part of the advantage we can give to our customers.
What has been an enabler of this shift towards circularity for Bosch?
Enabler is, well, it's also two-sided. Of course, it's also systems and technologies. So you have to manage a quite complex reverse logistics chain, also across countries, which is important. There it helps, of course, within Europe, that within the European Union, it is rather, or it's easier. On the other hand, the new cars, mobility platforms which will come, they will have much more of the value which can be recycled, coming from the green metal components, going over to technopolymer reusage, as well as lithium-ion batteries, which are extremely valuable, so they need to be saved. And on the other hand, an important enabler is, of course, also the public awareness of circularity, which is increasing and which is also benefiting in the customers being willing also to buy a remanufactured part. Because in the past it was rather an easy decision of any customer to say, if I have the choice between a renewed one and a completely new one, I would rather to have the new one. In the meantime, really there's a shifting, and the customer is really appreciating that given that we are guaranteeing the same lifetime as for a new part, he is also willing to have this remanufactured part.
Yes, the awareness topic is quite interesting, because we've actually asked our network regarding technology's potential for circularity. We've had some interesting feedback, actually, mainly regarding the lack of information, lack of trust, and lack of technological skills to put in place circular solutions. What about you? Do you think that technology could be the main driver for circularity?
It is definitely one of the drivers, because as mentioned, you have to manage here quite complex processes, and this cannot be done manually, and also the requirements are different. So technology is definitely one of the important drivers, but amongst others, again, it's also the awareness and the acceptance, because in the end, it's always the customer who decides.
Yes, exactly. Circular economy is a lot about ecosystems and collaborations as well. Have you opened up a bit more since this shift at Bosch? And are there some keys to collaborate successfully between startups, technology providers, and corporates such as you, Bosch, according to you?
Well, actually, we are, as Bosch, also quite involved in a lot of European initiatives, also out of the Horizon 2020 program, in which we are collaborating also with scientific institutions, universities, as well as smaller companies, all in front of the vision how you can manage the processes in also a very economic as well as ecological way. So the vision, for example, of one of these projects, RECIPS, is that you really separate the physical from the information flow, and in the end, and you do not have all the trade levels in between this, but if there is a part returned out of a workshop, it does not go over the two trade levels and then to Bosch and then to or another remanufacturer and then to the site where it is remanufactured. But in the end, the part is scanned or evaluated right at the point at the garage, at the workshop, most probably with an optical device like a mobile phone, and then based on this, the part can flow directly to a remanufacturing site, and all the other processes, they are managed independently and automated in behind, so that everybody also gets their share in the value add.
That's actually interesting. I can maybe share at the end of the webinar the link to the Recipes website so everyone can have a look. Well, thank you very much, Peter Lukassen. That's very interesting. We'll continue with Francesca Suarez and sustainable finance. Maybe, Francesca, if you could tell us a bit more about how you work and how you adapt to this new economic model.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Marie. Maybe first what I would introduce is like what Mirova invests in. So Mirova, we invest mainly in listed companies. So those are companies that are listed in the stock exchanges. So in Europe, you have Euronext. In New York, you have the New York Stock Exchange, and you have London Stock Exchange. So roughly majority of our investments are really in big companies, so multinationals. And we also invest in fixed income, which is basically bonds, whether of corporates as well, but also of countries, of local agencies, of development banks. And finally, we invest directly into projects, where usually in renewable energy, but also more and more now in sustainable agriculture. And so being an investor, we believe that our main impacts are found in our choice of investments. Obviously, we can do things better with our direct operations to make them more sustainable, more circular. However, we believe that it is really our choice of investment where we as investors can have a real impact on sustainability. And as such, having a more circular business model is important for the companies and projects that we invest in. And it's really a strong aspect of consideration when we analyze the company and how we take it into consideration into our investment process.
How do you actually define sustainable finance? What is it exactly and what's behind it?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Marie, because actually, depending on whom you talk to, there are different definitions for sustainable finance. And actually, we at Mirova, we define sustainable finance as investing in companies and projects that have a positive impact on the environment and society while minimizing these risks. This means that investment decisions should also consider the social and environmental impacts. In the case of, for example, when we look into investing in companies, we would look into what the company does. So how do their products and or services provide solutions to sustainable development issues? And we also consider the positive and negative social impacts, social and environmental impacts they can have in their operations. For example, does the company have a proactive parental leave policy for all geographies? And how are they transforming their business model into from a linear one to a more circular one? So we really try to overlook the company from the product perspective, but also through their operations, which also includes the life cycle of their products and their services.
And talking about the projects you directly invest in, we can feel that there are some trends in sustainable finance. You mentioned green energies. We know that has been on the radar for a few years now, but we see some evolution, and basically all industries are now impacted. At Mirova, how do you choose to diversify the sectors you work in, and how do you adapt to that changing landscape?
Yeah, sure. So we currently actually invest in a wide variety of sectors. So for example, in our listed equities, we invest in energy, water utilities, transportation, building, food and beverage, health, textile, and etc. And since we put a strong accent on solutions that the companies can provide, there is an inert bias towards certain sectors, such as the energy sector, particularly renewable energies, but also the health sector, where the environmental and or social benefits of their products are pretty much straightforward. We also see solutions in water utilities, transportation, and food and beverage. So that's fairly easy. However, for sectors where their products do not necessarily provide solutions to sustainable development issues, we really have to put a more focus on how they manage their business. and how do they really ensure that their business model today how do they evolve their business model of today to ensure that it would still exist tomorrow. So for examples of this is the textile companies. So textile companies, whether that be footwear or clothing, we don't necessarily see as a solution to sustainable development issues. However, we would like to see how the textile companies are currently trying to make their business model more circular, particularly with regards to decreasing the overconsumption of textiles and changing consumer behaviors to using the textiles a bit longer, for example.
And according to you, what could be the future evolution of sustainable finance?
So I feel like since the Paris Agreement, as I mentioned a while ago, we've seen a big uptake of sustainable finance, of finance taking a stronger role into transforming into a sustainable world, right? And so we see several works being done at the European level, under the European Commission, to steer public and private capital towards sustainable investments. So one of the things that the European Commission is trying to do is try to develop a unified classified system of what actually does it mean to be sustainable. So what economic activities are sustainable, so that it's easier to identify. Because a big question we see today is there's no real definition of sustainability. And so, for example, if you want investors to invest into something that is sustainable, if there's no real definition, then it can really be whatever and what they want to be. So that is very important to define what is sustainable. We also notice that there are other things that we are like. Another thing is a green bond standard. So I don't know if a lot of the people in the audience know what a green bond is, but basically what it is that companies, countries, or local agencies can raise money in the debt market, and this money that they raise would invest in green projects. And so we see that the EU, to ensure that there's no greenwashing and to ensure that there's no integrity, the EU is now considering a standard to how companies and how investors should look into these kinds of mechanisms. Another thing that we see is low carbon indices. So we see that a lot of portfolio managers want to decrease the level of the carbon footprint of their portfolios. However, they usually do this by investing directly into service companies like financials, technology, who don't necessarily have a big carbon footprint to begin with. And so what we want to see is them investing more in the solutions, such as renewable energy, clean transportation companies. And finally, we see also like metrics for climate related disclosure. So a big thing is like a lot of portfolio managers don't actually know the carbon impacts of the carbon footprints of their portfolio, and also each company, financial company, provides it differently. So now we're trying to see how we can provide a unified thing. So currently we see that sustainable finance is done only by a few actors, but we will see that such initiatives will become more mainstream. We already saw that with Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, mentioning it. However, we still have to see it into practice. What they do and the level of ambition is still very much variable. And so we really see that we need to have stronger regulation, or at least a bigger role of the EU to really help better frame this market.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Francesca, for your answers. And now we'll have a closer look at the point of view of an impact investor, Gilles Geoffroy. So we were wondering what applies to the impact investment activity, and here is it.
So regarding our investments, we really try to look at both the financial standpoint and the impact of the activity at the same time, and we try to maximize both aspects of the company. So from a financial standpoint, we aim at maximizing the financial return of our investors in order to reward their own risk, and we are aiming at market return. We don't think that we have to shoot for below the market returns because we are investing into impact companies. And regarding the impact of the companies, we try to have ambition regarding the environmental or social impact. If we look at the first fund, Alter Equity 3P that we launched in 2013, the portfolio companies of this fund have created more than 700 jobs, which is quite high for impact in France. And they have collectively avoided the emissions of more than 1 million tons of CO2 per year since the beginning of the fund, which is like the yearly emissions of a city of 100,000 inhabitants. So those are quite important and significant impact figures, and they go along financial return that we shoot at market level.
And what do you actually look at when you're considering an investment? Are there specific metrics or indicators related to circularity?
Yes. The first thing we look at is the impact of the activity. So whenever we have a new opportunity, entrepreneurs coming to us for investing into their company, we consider the impact of the company, meaning the products or the services that are sold by the company, what kind of impact they have on the social side or on the environmental side, and do they have a true impact for major issues. So that means that we exclude the businesses that have just an impact, a side impact, meaning that their business doesn't have a direct impact, it's just an indirect consequence of the business that has an impact. In this case, we don't invest into the company, and we also exclude the companies who have an impact for only a fraction of their business. Like a company has a business as usual activity and they are just launching a new circular activity, which is like less than 5% of the business. Those are all, so this is also a case where we don't invest into the company. But once we get to know the company and once we validate the impact of the activity, then we look at a second level of impact, which is the impact of the conduct of business, meaning that the company can produce, can have a factory to produce the product that they are selling. But in this case, we will look at the way the factory is run, the energy consumption that the factory is having, the way the factory is using water, the way the factory is managing the waste, you know, all the social or environmental or governance practices that are around the activity itself. And for all those practices, we set up what we call a ESG business plan, which is environmental, social, and governance business plan. And we set up this business plan based on 10 to 15 criteria that we set up with the entrepreneurs. And that will be the basis for a continuous action plan, improvement plan that will accompany the company and the entrepreneurs all along the time where we stay together with the entrepreneurs.
And what are the company's profile and the investment amounts?
So basically what we do is we take 1 to 10 million euro minority shareholding, and we invest into companies which have a minimum of 800,000 euro turnover.
So we also discussed with Gilles Geoffroy on the fact that linearity starts to appear in these metrics as a risk. You mentioned that the main ones taken into account as of today are climate change related risk, mainly in regions where natural disaster can happen, but also the waste management in case a company produces hazardous waste, which highlight the limits of linear models. So going back to the business models, I feel that some of them are proven today, notably the not so famous product as a service. And besides this type of business model, what are the business models that stand out according to you? If you have any recent promising success story, maybe Peter Lukassen, that you could share with us?
Well, in terms of business models and especially in the automobile industry, we are talking about really turning here the once disposed parts and also all this energy and resources which are into valuable resources for our future. And what is something, and I briefly talked about this, which we are discussing here in VSIPs, there is real the business model in managing or separating physical and information flows, and by this allowing for increasing efficiency and circularity. Because in the end, it's everything. Something also has to pay out. And we cannot rely on the regulation to give us some pressure on doing this. We have to make it work on our own, and there the IT solutions can help. And I'm positive over the next 2 or 3 years we really will have this working.
Okay, and Francesca Suarez, maybe any business model that struck your attention recently?
Yeah, so we see that, so since we follow mainly big companies, or we notice that these big companies are actually trying to experiment on different business models and circularity. The biggest challenge with these companies is how to evolve their business model without isolating any of their current consumers, right? So they're usually trying to experiment around different types of packaging to reduce the use of single-use plastic, but also rethinking the entirety of their business model and seeing how they can really make it more circular.
Mm-hmm. And as we said in the beginning of our webinar, some of our listeners are sort of entrepreneurial focused and try to develop circular business models. If you as an investor, a bank and a corporate had one tip to share with them, what would it be? Maybe Peter, you could start.
Well, if you try to develop a business model, especially if you target on offering these to bigger corporations, then really you should focus or you should understand big corporations which are really tied in rigid systems like SAP, ERP systems, and there are a lot of shortcomings and weaknesses in those. And if there is the possibility to take out some parts of the process and have some modules attached to those, this is something which is extremely valuable to big corporations. Also, the corporations, they are in general they are rather slow. They are not so agile. So really try to fail early and do an iterative approach about your businesses. Try different venues also in corporations, and overall the sentiment is really positive. So we will definitely see a spur of new business models in this field.
Okay, that sounds great. And maybe Francesca Suarez, if you have a tip to share with the audience.
Yeah, sure. So my tip is proof of concept is really key. So sometimes we also see entrepreneurs come to us with really interesting ideas. However, it's yet to be shown whether these ideas will actually work in the market. So proof of concept is really key. Another thing is also that focus really needs to be put on, because if we want to talk about circularity, sustainability, it's really a lot of behavioral change for the individuals. So it really has to, what we see is like called human-centric design. So really taking into consideration human psychology and how to make the circular choice the easier choice, which today is not necessarily the case.
Yes, that's very true. Okay, thank you. And finally, here we will have Gilles Geoffroy's tip to develop circular business models.
And the tip will be definitely to put circularity at the service of the product and not the other way around. meaning that what the consumers or the client will buy first and foremost is the product itself. So the product has to have a good pricing, good value, but they won't buy the circularity itself. They will buy the circularity throughout the product and all the services or the good value that the product can offer.
Okay, so thank you very much, Peter Lukassen, Francesca Suarez, and Gilles Geoffroy for your really interesting feedback. So now we'll jump in directly to the Q&A session. So Peter Lukassen and Francesca Suarez will stick around to answer the different questions that you've raised in the question box of the platform throughout the webinar. And do not hesitate to still ask some questions and mention who is the question directed to. So let's have a look. So the first question that I can see is how important is a team involved in a circular project? Does everyone need to be expert on the topic? So I don't know if Peter or Francesca, who would like to answer about the team involvement on a circular project? Maybe Peter?
No, I wouldn't say that you have to be an expert in circularity. Basically, it's also, but it's nothing completely new or rocket science. It's just to have also a broader scope on the topics. So step by step you will learn, and also there is not the circularity expert. There are specific requirements for any product and business case, and circular economy is just one of them.
Okay, that's interesting. And we have another question, which is what's the most spectacular circular business that you've funded or observed? Maybe, Francesca, you have feedback on that point.
Yeah, sure. So actually what I see now today is there are two interesting ones that I'd like to put forward. One is for those who are based in France or in the US, the founder of TerraCycle, which recycles a lot of the packaging, founded something called Loop. And in English, it's Loop Store. In French, it's Boutique Loop. And actually, they're trying to see how they can do online shopping, make it more circular. So everything that they sell on their store is using packaging that needs to be returned to them so that it can be used again. So for example, they have pilot programs here in Paris, but also in the US. And here in Paris, it's actually a partnership they have with Carrefour, a big retail supermarket chain here in France. So that is very interesting, and we'll see how that goes, because it's really a different model from what we have today, where a lot of the packaging is just thrown away. But in the Loop, like literally everything is reusable, from the box that they deliver to you, from the cat. So it's very interesting. Another one that I found is very interesting is Adidas. So Adidas, they launched a reusable shoe. When was it? Maybe last year, and it's actually called the Future Craft Loop, where the shoe will be made of only one material, no glue, so to really ensure the reusability of the material. And at the moment, like maybe 10% of the actual material can be reused in the shoe. So the goal is like you get your shoe, and then once it's overused, you return your shoe back to Adidas, and from that, Adidas makes a new shoe using the old shoe. And so this is interesting because it's not yet 100% working, so only 10% of the material is being made into the new shoe. But I think it's interesting to see how companies are really trying to think about how to reinvent their business models together with the consumer. So Adidas is currently piloting this with just a few people all over the world, and I would be very curious to see how this evolves in the future.
Yes, that's really interesting. And going back to the supermarket, it's impressive because they've partnered with really big brands from consumers' foods and really big names. That's really interesting to see. We don't have to make a choice on the brand. That's great. Okay, so actually I have quite a few questions for you, Francesca. What challenges did you face when integrating clean energy projects within your portfolio? What are the lessons learned?
Well, one of the challenges that we had with integrating clean energy projects into our portfolio was actually first trying to exclude non-clean energy companies into our portfolio. So there's a lot of work in ensuring that none of our investments are invested in oil and gas projects. So that's really the first, let's say, hurdle that you have. And how is that done? It's to be honest, it's a lot of human interactions, really. So it's really talking to your investment managers, talking to those at the investment side to really help them understand why circularity, why sustainable business models really is the future, and how this can impact the performance of their funds. A while ago, one of the recordings of Geoffroy was really that they're trying to show that you don't have to make sacrifices in terms of financial in order to have environmental and social impacts. And that is really an important message that we have to send to everyone, because for the moment there's a lot of prejudice in the sense that, oh, if you want environmental social impact, you need to sacrifice on returns. And so there's a lot of, whether that be for clean energy projects, but for really anything else. So that is a big hurdle, and that takes time, that takes talking to the people who think that way. That shows, you also have to show like proof of why it works. So for example, we've seen over the years, particularly recently, how actually investment in the oil and gas sector has been very volatile. And so a lot of our portfolio managers are actually now very happy that they're more invested in clean energy than in coal, for example. So it's a big, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of really talking, PR relations, really.
Okay, yeah, that's really true. And so next question is to Peter, maybe. How many people are you in your team and department? So maybe, how is your department organized, basically?
Well, that's quite tricky because, as I mentioned, I'm basically coordinating all the business units who are invested here in circular economy. So if you are talking about how many people are in this area, only in the business units, we should talk about 30 persons. But also we have experts in sales, in logistics, in the internal process division. So overall, for the aftermarket divisions, we are talking at about 100 persons.
Okay. Okay, so I think that would be it for today. So thank you very much again for answering all the questions and for the interesting feedback. Just a quick reminder that there will be another webinar organized by my colleague Ramona Landgraf on funding opportunities from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. later today. And if you would like to participate, please answer the following 2 questions so we can send you the registration link. So the questions should appear on your screen very soon. Thank you. And the last question for you. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. We have a few questions that just came up, so we'll take the time to answer them to you. We'll send you emails with the presentation and more information. So thank you very much and have a nice day.